Welcome to Hope on Fire, relevant talk radio for young adults. Whether you're 25 or 45, there's bound to be a discussion that you care about. Our mission is to share practical ways to find God in your everyday life. Our host today is Sabine Vatel.
To be single is one thing. To be single, Christian, and a woman is a situation that brings unique pressures and implications that we will dare talk about here at Hope on Fire. Welcome, I'm Sabine Vatel, your host for today, as we address the secret lives of single Christian women. And I have on the panel here beautiful single women, friends of mine. I'm excited to introduce Loretta Bacchiocchi, not a stranger here at Hope on Fire. She's actually one of our contributing editor for Healthy Lifestyle. Yeah. And dynamic, compassionate personality. And sounds like a dating service.
Thank you. Yes, we are available.
I know. She serves she's a nurse. She's a professor of nursing at the Florida Hospital College of Health Sciences. And thank you, Loretta, for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking.
Good, dear. And also we have Dr. Saska Sookra, family practice physician, seminar speaker for teens and young adult, and a friend of God. All of you are friends of God, and I want to say that about you, Saska.
Thank you.
Welcome, Saska. And finally, we're pleased to welcome Shari Gamewell. And Shari, we're pleased to have her. She's a busy lady with a private counseling practice in the Orlando, Florida area. And she's been featured in a Christian call-in radio program. And her extensive clinical and life experience guides people to a healthier way of living. And you're going to be helping us as we talk about singleness and womanhood. And you know, sometimes it's a topic that's suspect, this idea of women who are single and in a world of sex in the city and other things. Now, how do you feel that the stereotypes of single women seep into the church life? We'll just get right into that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's your cue. That's just kind of
Oh, they do. The Bible model is usually of the woman, is of a wife, a mother, rearing the children. You know, there's and then of course, the older you get, you frequently get asked that question, regardless of who it could be, family or church members. Like, you're still single, how come? So it's there's definitely that thought that you must be married at a certain time and start having children, in order to be fulfilling your role as a woman.
That's right.
I think there's the implication underneath all that, well, what's wrong with you? Either you're too picky or you don't have your priorities straight if you're not married. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's that pressure from that in the church that you should be getting married at that certain time. Yeah.
Well, marriage is up there. And I think when we talk about the Proverb 31 woman, finer than rubies, she's much more, but what's highlighted is that she's a wife, she's a mother. And if you're not any of these things, what room is there for you in that circle?
If you look at Proverbs 31, what I find is that it may not necessarily mean that you have to be all those things at the same time, because I think, God says there's a season for everything in our lives. And if you look at Proverbs 31, you'd see that that woman, the virtuous woman, was also a businesswoman. She invested, she did different things. Yeah. And so I don't think it necessarily means that we all have to be fulfilling all those roles in Proverbs 31 at the same time. And God may have that certain season for us where we reach there, but maybe we're not there right now. But that's okay.
Yeah,
you still have that role in the church where you can be a mother to, I think the Bible talks about, women, and there were a lot of single women in the Bible, and they still had fulfilling roles. If you look at Mary Magdalene, if you looked at Dorcas, if you looked at so many other women, they had roles where they were mothers to other people in the church as well. And I think we have that role as well.
How do you handle that? However, thank you, Saska. Now, if somebody, because I was at a wedding, and I know some of you can relate to this, and it was a cousin of mine, and some of the patriarchs of that family or uncles or that, your turn is next. Wink, wink.
Oh, no. Better yet, when is going to be your turn?
Yeah, when's your turn coming? How do you respond?
We're controlling that. Yeah.
How do you handle? How do you respond to that, Shari?
Well, I'm thinking here, singleness is a state. It's not who we are, and so it's trying to fit into some norm of a standard, and we have to see what standard people are placing that. But they look at that as part of a person's identity instead of who they are and where they are in their time at that time in life.
So what are you saying is going on when somebody identify you with not who you are, but by your state? Because what I'm trying to, let me rephrase that, because I don't know if that makes sense. But, sometimes as, if I'll be, I think we make people sometimes uncomfortable by our state. Don't you think, Shari? Is that, what do you think?
I think that pretty much in anybody's state, the other person can be uncomfortable because of insecurities a person holds, belief systems that they were raised in and they haven't addressed yet. And so when we lack knowing who we are, we hook onto identities, false kind of identities, but roles that we play: doctor, teacher, counselor. Those are roles that I play. Single, that's what I am right now.
Right.
It doesn't mean I'll stay there, and the Lord can shift me into a different role in life also. So we're looking at identity, really.
Okay.
I think in response to your question, when someone asks you, so, why are you single? When is your turn coming? I just simply say, I haven't met the right person. And that truly is the case. You've met lots of good people along your journey, but it may just not be that that's who God has for you. And there's a reason and a season for everything.
Right.
Yeah. And another thought that I often bring up is that I'm just not willing to compromise. If I had wanted to, if being married was ultimately my ultimate goal, I would have been married 20 years ago. But there were other things that I saw God opening up for me in different directions, and it just wasn't, it wasn't like the top goal of the moment. And I do think that God gives certain women that gift, that ability to remain single, to do some things for Him. And I look at the things that I have done in the last 20 years that there's no way I would have been able to do had I been married. And things that I continue to try to do because I remain single.
Yes. Okay. So how do you, I remember a follow-up question in a conversation we had. Do we buy into what you had said? Do we buy into what we're saying? What is the secret? Because people have this view of us being lonely and looking for a spouse. Some of us may want to be married one day. We're open to it, but we're not necessarily, closed up in a room somewhere saying, why?
Well, it's interesting that you should say that, because I had been involved in a relationship for many months. And I remember before I got involved in this relationship, praying to God, oh, please, it's like, all right already, when are you going to send this, perfect man that I've been praying for every day? And so finally this man comes in my life. And I'm like, okay, Lord, you were supposed to already bring him perfect, ready to go. I wasn't supposed to have to tweak him, And I remember saying over and over again, man, relationships are hard. There's an awful lot of work. And I had to give up so many things.
Yes.
I was like, okay, I had to here I had this fabulous schedule that totally revolved around me. And now I had to
think of somebody else.
I had to give up things. And I thought, wow, this is way too hard. And I thought, Lord, if this doesn't work out, then I am never going to pray again for that. Just to give an example of that.
Sure.
Sometimes, we pray and beg and think that we want something, not realizing that the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence.
Yes.
And maybe God wasn't done working on me yet. I look back on that and say, you know what,
So
Lord?
you're suggesting singleness as a time of preparation.
A preparation. And I look at what I have learned from that relationship and realize that I am, and all the relationships put together and all the experiences, I am a completely different person now than I was when I was 25. I would have been looking for the completely wrong person for myself back then versus what I'm focused on now.
Okay.
And I think, the whole concept of whether you're lonely as a single woman and so forth, I think you go through fluxes. Just like anybody. You could be married and still be lonely.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think as a single person, you do have that fluctuation between being very fulfilled and God leading your life and, Lord, this is so good. And you're on this spiritual high where God is using you for whatever purpose you have. And then there are times where you're disillusioned and you're like, Lord, when are you going to send this person? I thought, so I think you do fluctuate, but if your underlying trust is in God, and that was one of the things we had talked about earlier about trusting God, and that's one of the key principles of being single as a single woman, is that your trust has to remain in God.
I agree.
Because your life is going to go through fluctuations. You're going to meet different people. You're going to, even friends or family, they may not be there for you the way that you've been hoping for, because we're all human. We fail.
Yes.
But, the thing that I've come to realize as I've gotten older is that the one constant in your life is God. He will be there for you no matter what. And that has been one of the key principles of learning to trust him.
Yeah.
Shari, how do you respond? Thank you, Saska. How do you respond to that, to somebody who's going through trusting God? It's a concept that's kind of out there for
Nebulous.
some people. Nebulous.
Yeah, well, and it is. It's learning how to have a relationship with God, just not knowing about him. And there are many times people say, trust God, pray more, but what's that concept? How do I have a relationship with him? I have people come in, and one of my first questions after we get into the session a little bit is...
Again, you're a counselor. You mean people come to your office?
I'll go to the board, and I'll just turn and I'll write up, who am I? And I would say... over the years, maybe 5 people could start getting below what roles they're in. And so when I finally get that up there, I'm able to look and say, this is what you're bringing into a relationship. We need to know who we are first, to what we're bringing into a relationship, to have this relationship first. And that's not real fun for people to hear or want to know about, because now it's work.
Yeah.
Or it's something in someone's life that they haven't gone deeper to find out. And so when we're desiring, I believe, like you're saying, when you're going to bring this man into my life, and then we go, well, let's put the stops on that here, and let's find out about you first. And what is that underneath there that you really long for?
So somebody who's listening to us saying, I want a man today. And why is God not doing this for me? You're saying there may be, and there is, some work still to be done to grow internally.
Barry Black, we both were there. I heard him speak recently.
For those who don't know, the United States chaplain,
for
Senate
the Senate.
chaplain for the Senate. Yes,
Yeah.
Go on,
Fabulous
Loretta.
speaker. But he was talking about that, for those of us who are single and who are hoping to become more content and more fulfilled and more complete by getting into a relationship, we're approaching it all wrong, because you need to feel fulfilled and complete and as an individual, and bring that into the relationship. And so it could be just God working.
That's right.
That's what we're still,
We'll be back. You get to talk some more. Come back, listeners, and we'll go back into how to live while, I guess, you're waiting. Welcome back to Hope on Fire. This is Sabine Vatel, your host for today, and I have here with me some dynamic women. What shall we call ourselves? The Christian version of The View. I don't know. We have Loretta, Bacchiocchi, Saska, Sookra, and Shari Gamewell, and we're talking about the secret lives of single women. Isn't that tantalizing?
Christian.
Oh, thank you. Got to get the title right. Exactly, Christian. And what kind of what is it? What do you think is the main difference with Christian being? What does Christianity add to what layer does it add actually to your singleness? Because there's a picture out there that church women, we don't go through some of the temptation that maybe regular women do.
I think it makes life more complicated.
Yeah.
It definitely defines the different. If you're truly a faith seeker, seeking God, it definitely defines how you live your life, hopefully. And so that definitely adds complications to your dating, to meeting people in terms of what you will do, the boundaries you set up, and so on. And I'm sure Loretta and I we were all talking about that before in the break.
Because one of the challenges, because 2/4, I hope I quoted it right, 2/4 of people at church are women, single women, and there's two women for one guy. 2 for one guy. So that adds complication in terms of the dating scene, obviously.
But it, on a positive note, being a Christian
we do want to be positive.
There's positives, and I would hate to say negatives, but from a positive perspective, being a Christian single person, your focus doesn't have to be on just the fact I'm single and out there desperately seeking,
Right.
for a man and tempted to compromise, at the first man that may come along. My focus can be on God. And my husband can temporarily, or should probably always be Jesus,
Right.
and the man always, come after that, so that there's always a sense of purpose. There's in my present life, there's always a tremendous sense of purpose that Christ can fulfill in me because I am a Christian and I accept Him. On the more courageous side of being a Christian woman, which came up when I met the last guy that I dated on an internet dating, and he's a very devout Catholic, and I said it up front right away, I don't believe in premarital sex. Well, of course, came up the whole argument, well, how do you know if you're going to be compatible or not? And I said, I'm going to trust the good Lord to figure that out, and
Right.
He wouldn't bring somebody into my life, and if I pray for that, he'll guide that. And he kept insisting this, how are you going to know if we're compatible? And then I finally just had to come back to him, well, Mr. Catholic, what does your Catholic faith have
Hello.
to say about,
Hello.
premarital sex? But I had to remain very firm and courageous, and I think you have to really be sure of who you are as an individual and as a Christian woman in order to do that. Because otherwise, the devil's going to use all sorts of different techniques to get you thrown off course.
That's right.
And
Go ahead, Saska.
I think a lot of women are looking for love, and they equate sex with love, and so that comes into play a lot, and it's not spoken about in our church very often.
No.
But there are a lot of women who are broken. They
Yes.
leave parts of themselves with relationships because they're hoping to find the right person, but they equate that in their relationship, getting physical with that person, and that's going to make them closer, when in reality it's not.
And thank you. And Shari, we talk about God being your husband, and I've heard, but God can't hold you. You don't feel Him physically. And to some people, it's like, if you have your things that you're dealing with, because I was reading an article on single women, but it was on a secular side, and how they're happy, etc. But they don't face that sort of courageous stance like you talked about, Loretta, saying no. Some of them actually engage in premarital sex. Not to say Christians don't either, but in general, relationships rules are much different, obviously. But what would you say to, how do we attend to some of the sisters who listening out here who are, it's real, the temptation's very real for them on how they, this idea of sex, companionship.
Well, and I agree. Sex really in the confines of marriage is another way of a deepening of intimacy. It's not about sex. It's another form of intimacy. And it is, we could say, well, Jesus is my husband. And they're like, yeah, right. Like, what's that? And that's going to require a deeper walk with Him and understanding what that is, and people coming alongside us. But also in those times, it's what are we feeding our soul? What are we putting into our soul? A lot of people I talk to, they go home and they turn on shows that have, premarital sex, all different types going on. And so if you're sitting down and you're feeding your soul and you're watching that, that's going to start opening up these doors to continue to get your mind focused on that. So I think it's good about what are we feeding our soul? What are we putting in? What are we watching? What conversations are we engaging in? And do we have someone that we can call when we're in those times, that we can just say, I need someone to talk to right now. This is where I am. An accountability place.
But I think the other thing, it's not just necessarily sex, and I mean, you could really expand that intimacy pretty far out. And that I think what intimacy does at the inappropriate time is it fogs up our mental intellect to be able to work through the relationship and really evaluate it for what it is, and really see if this is truly the person that God has sent into our lives, or am I so hung up with my heart? It's like, Lord, just make it work, because because you're just so emotionally involved that your brain cells are shut off. And I think intimacy to women especially does that. And so and I think,
so entangled so easily.
and I think we risk losing the respect of a man if we go too far before we marry them. I think, and there's plenty of research that demonstrates that. And so I think that by keeping ourselves a certain level of pureness before, it really pays off in in our marriage relationship.
Well, I think also it's not just that intimacy. It does cloud over Again,
Yeah.
what are we feeding our soul with?
Right.
But relationships in general, when people go in, there is a chemistry. There is a release that happens in our system. And, approximately the first 18 months of a relationship is infatuation.
Yeah, and
But
we
it's
love
like-
that feeling.
But we think it's love.
We think that's
And
it.
We think it's love. And so usually still, people get married, get engaged, and married within this first 12, 18-month period. Then they enter in this relationship, and you hear, where'd that come from? All right, can we get back to the way it used to be? Or what? See, it's not because we haven't gone deeper, so that now we're caught up in the infatuation of love and people reinforcing friends. You look great togetger.
Right.
Oh,
Because we love
he's
that.
awesome.
They want to see you
Oh,
happy, and it
yeah.
makes them feel good to see you, hooked up with somebody. Yeah, I want to talk, because that's what we're talking about, living, what to do in the meantime. I think I said as we were leaving the first part of our show.
And getting outside of a relationship, your life is not defined by a man and your relationship with that person. Because when God formed you, for the most part, you didn't have a twin, you didn't have a partner in the womb. God formed you, and so your life as a single Christian woman is not defined by, oh, I don't have a man. That's the key thing we have to recognize and remind ourselves of sometimes. It's not defined by, oh, I don't have a relationship, or I'm waiting for this person. But there's so many things that God blesses us with. And I'm sure each of us, we've had our struggles, but God has given each one of us a blessing in the privilege, the opportunity to participate in his ministry and whatever gifts he's given us.
One of the blessings that he's given us, thank you, is the opportunity to make some decisions and to move forward, not settle and wait for that man to come. And, it became true for me that we have expectation that we don't even realize we have. I remember when I moved out, in our culture, a woman doesn't move out of her house until she's about
she
to be
gets
married.
married.
It's like your parents are like, where you think you're going, A respectable woman, even if she's like 40, you know what I mean? Not that I'm not 40, but not that there's anything wrong with being 40. It's not
40 is
being
supposed
40.
to be 30.
40 is awesome. No, 40 is awesome.
It's supposed to be the new 30.
It
but
is.
anyways.
But the point I'm trying to make is,
I'm not 40 either,
I'm not
but
40 yet. I don't want to. Anyway, so is that you have to kind of grieve. And I was reading about there was a certain sadness because I moved out, but I was still single, and it came back to my mind that brief feeling of grief when I read the story about this young woman who bought her first house. And in her dream, she was going to buy it with her husband, and she was buying her house on her own. Isn't it the case that we have to sort of grieve some expectations that we have that's within us?
Yeah.
I have a similar story because I always wanted to go to Jamaica, and I always pictured it going with my spouse. Well, I just got tired of waiting, and I said, I really want to go to Jamaica. And so I went with my girlfriend, and there was that thought when I went there. I was like, oh, this might have been nice to go with the guy, but that's okay. I had a great time anyways. So
You got your groove back.
Yeah. So.
On your own back.
Well, yeah.
But I'll tell you, I think you bring up a really good point because, we are not damsels in distress. We have become, because of the fact that we have remained single, we have become very strong, adventurous women.
Yes.
And we have become fairly fulfilled women. And so now it becomes to the point that the man is not going to be bringing happiness into our lives because we have reached a level of contentment and fulfillment, in all the different activities that God is guiding us and the adventures that we, venture out on, that we're really, we're kind of like coasting along up here. And the man that we're looking for is not to take us down here. It's kind of like, so.
To go along with us, to kind of walk with us.
And to just continue to, increase that, that experience, that adventure. And so maybe our expectations are also increased. My expectations of what I'm looking for now are
Absolutely.
way different than what I was looking for at 25.
Yeah.
And so, that could certainly play into why, we continue to remain single. And yes, maybe there is a truth to being a little picky, but you know what? I think that's okay.
Yeah, and we have, in the few minutes that we have left, we're here sitting here, and we're not saying that we have it all together all the time.
No.
Although we look pretty good.
90%.
90% of the time. But what word of encouragement in the short time that we have would you give to, how does the word of God instruct your life, as a woman, not just as a single person at this point? But how do you find your encouragement for the journey? Shari, I'll go with you.
Okay. Well, I would like to talk to the people that are out there going, guys, that's all nice and great, and I'm about to turn off the TV. But you want to know what? There was many, I don't know all about them, but many valleys that I went to and many broken relationships. And it was finally that time when I said, enough. I need to find out what's going on inside of here and find someone to help work through that, to help me get to that point.
You know, I thank you for that. And I know if we had time, we would hear all of your stories of brokenness. And it's a journey. And we're all very different sitting at that table. But what unifies us is faith. It's our
Amen.
faith.
And
I
trust,
appreciate you sharing your heart with us today, Loretta, Saska, and Shari. You know, we're very diverse, as we have said. And what connects us is indeed faith. And our heart go out to you today and our sisters out there. And we want to leave you with this blessing. And it says, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. If you agree, just say amen. Thank you for joining us at Hope on Fire. We'll see you next time.
Hope on Fire is produced by Livestreams Media, a listener-supported ministry. To download a free copy of today's program or be a part of our social network, please visit our website at hopeonfire.org. You may also contact us by writing to Livestreams Media, P.O. Box 608513, Orlando, Florida 32860. Once again, that's Livestreams Media, P.O. Box 608513, Orlando, Florida 32860, or online at hopeonfire.org. Thank you so much for your letters and continued support. Until next time, may God set your hope on fire.